Hello and welcome once again to 177 Nations of Tasmania. The conflict in Syria, which escalated in 2012, created a humanitarian crisis of massive proportions, with millions fleeing the violence and destruction and attempting to find safe havens in neighbouring countries such as Lebanon, Jordan and Turkey. More than a decade on, the conflict still festers and millions remain displaced. Sandra was a primary school student in a suburb of Damascus when the trouble began, but her family lived through the constant risk of bombs or violence for 7 years, before two incidents really shook them and made them realise that they would have to leave. The family would eventually find their way to Lebanon and begin the process of applying to be accepted as refugees by Australia. Then eventually they were settled in Tasmania, where Sandra would have to complete her final years of schooling to get into university and pursue her dream to become a teacher. Settling in Tasmania has not been without its challenges for the family, but there have also been achievements.
So, my name is Sandra. I'm 24 years old. I born in Syria, specifically in Damascus. My family, my mom, dad, my sister, my brother Shadi, we all lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, 10 minutes from the center of Damascus. So we lived in a suburb, it's called Jerimana, and it was a 10-minute drive to Damascus. We children all attended a private Christian schools. Our schooling was very family-oriented, as my mom was a teacher there too. Our dad's sister worked there and our cousin attended the same school.
So did you have a lot of family living around in the same neighbourhood?
Yes. So my grandparents had a house in the middle of Damascus. My grandparents had that house and then they moved to be near us later on. So I think I was grade 3 when my whole family was in the same neighbourhood.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like only 5-10 minutes drive to everywhere.
And what did your parents do at that time?
As I said, my mom was a teacher. My dad worked in a HR for a big multinational company that managed well-known stores such as like H&M, Mother Care, if you know it. I think in Syria, school for us finished at midday on Fridays. It actually was different because the private schools, which they were mostly Christian schools, they will finish early on Friday and have Saturday and Sunday off, Sunday for the mass. And then the government school would finish Sunday early. So that was nice. But I was in a Christian private school, so school for us finished midday. And my dad would come and pick us up, our cousins, me, my cousins, my sister, my mom, my auntie that worked at the same school, and take us all to his mum house, where we enjoyed a traditional lunch together. There used to be at least 15 of us there. It was by far the best day of the week.
And when you say traditional food, what would be an example of that?
I think the best thing she cooked, my lasting memory of these meals in my grandmom Fafa's bean. It's a beans that she would cook with tomato, parsley and oil, and we eat some pickled cucumbers with it. And I can tell you nobody could cook those like my grandma did. The smell of the hot bread is another lasting memory. School system in Syria is different from what it is in Australia. Syria schooling is really, really strict. We would be at school at 7, probably 7:30. Like we will go out to the bus, waiting for the bus to come and collect us from our apartment. We'll be at school by 7:30. That's where the day starts. We would finish at around 2 o'clock. We don't have really, funny subject or electives out there we call them in here, like art, music. Even art and music are really strict and they could make you fail the school of that year if you don't pass them. I remember we had a very thick science book. It was about 500 pages every year. We had to memorize from the page 1 to page 2 to the last page to pass the subject. So I wouldn't say school was the funniest or nicest part of my life in Syria.
So
it was pretty stressful.
So was it in the classroom, everyone had to sort of pay attention to the teacher?
Yes.
And it was directed by the teacher?
I was not allowed to look at my teacher eye.
Right.
Yes, it's really strict. Yeah, like I remember if my teacher would tell me something and then I look at her in the eye, she was like, put your eyes down. I'm like, okay, I put my eyes down, and she looks at me and is like, when I talk to you, put your eyes up to me. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? It's really, really strict. And I think what makes it more harder that my mom was teacher there, and she would know everything I'm doing, so I had to be very straight there. We didn't have laptops. We were not allowed to use our laptops at school. No, none of the schools had laptops, iPad or anything like that.
And after school, what did you like to do when you weren't at school?
Ooh, after school, we would get home. My mom would be cooking, preparing the lunch for us. Yes, in Syria we have lunch at 3:00. 90, like it. We have lunch at 3:00. So my mom would be cooking our lunch. I'll get home. I'll, wash my hands, wash my face, get ready for lunch. I'll have my lunch, and then we'll start studying. And that'll be 3:30 till 7. That's the time I would be studying. And I had to actually sit down and study, and my mom will help us study because the next day my teacher will ask me a question, and I have ton of homeworks to do for the next day. So it was a really stressful time that too. I'll finish studying, and then we will go to our family house. It's usually my grandparents' house that we will go and visit. And, sometimes we go to cousins or aunties, but we have to visit someone every day. Like, it's weird if you don't go to someone's house to visit or they come to your house. And, we'll come back home, time to sleep. The war started when I was in year 4. It began with the protests in the streets, and at first we were not too worried about it. We thought it was just only a protest at the end, After all, just a protest. But then 4 months later, things began to escalate with ISIS got involved. It was literally overnight that we realized things were really serious.
Question about
Yeah.
when did you realize it was, or what made you realize it was serious?
I remember waking up one day to the news saying that Daraa, it's a suburb in Syria. It was I think 2-hour drive from us, from Damascus, was falling down. All the houses were bombed, and we saw that the first thing in the news overnight. We woke up to that in the news. Daraa is on the it's on the ground, nothing left, no buildings. All the civilians people there were dead, and that's what we made us oh my God, it's really close. It was scary. So we actually lived with the war raging around us for 7 years. And, believe it or not, life went on despite the madness that was happening around us. To survive and not go crazy, we ended up normalizing the endless car bombings, missiles, attacks, general chaos, and accepting that we no longer ever felt safe. But you have to normalize it because otherwise you'll go crazy.
So when you say normalize, what does that mean in practical terms?
So you would, have a missile falling down, lots of people dying in the next neighborhood. And 2 hours later, someone will come, clean the blood, take the bodies of the people died. 30 minutes later, everyone back in the street as normal, like nothing have happened.
Right. But did you change anything in your behaviour or your routines, anything like that?
Yes, it definitely did. I remember my mom would never let us going out by ourselves. And yeah, she can't protect us from the missile, obviously, but she thought, okay, if you're going to die, we'll die all together.
Right.
That was the idea of her. So wherever we're going, she would be with us. You would sleep and you never know if you're going to wake up the next day or not.
And did you have a shelter or somewhere safe to go?
For our house, it was the bathroom. It was the strongest room in our house because it had rooms on both sides, and then on all sides actually. And then on the top, we had the storage room. So whenever the missile will fall down, it will fall on that area before the bathroom. So that was our safe place for that specific house. I think in the first year that happened, we were like, oh, let's not leave house and things. But, when you live 7 years of the war, you can't just stay at home. Life had to go as normal, despite the missile flying overhead. Doesn't matter. You just have to live your life and go out and hope you don't die.
So I guess that means that it wasn't the war wasn't constantly going on around you. There would be sort of times when it got worse and better.
Yes. I think till now the war goes in ups and downs. I think we had a month where we had a car bombing every single day, and you never know where. You could be walking near a car and suddenly it explodes. And then we had a month where the car bombing was happening everywhere, and you walk near a car, you never know it's gonna be exploded in the next seconds or not. But then the next month we had a really quiet month, and then we go again. You never knows when it's gonna happen.
And so did that kind of situation make you feel more anxious, or did you just learn to accept it?
we did definitely feel anxious, but yeah, we did just learn to live with it. Yeah, again, you just have to. Even me now, thinking about it, I'm like, how did like, how was I able to normalize that? It drives me crazy. So I try not to think about it as much, and you not be able to think about it. You would just die from thinking, I think. You'll kill yourself from thinking. Maybe we thought of, not leave the house for the first year because we thought, okay, things will gonna end at some point. But the war's still going till now. That's lots of years. We lived 7 years of the war, and if we have locked ourselves, it would be a problem.
And so at what stage did your family decide that you need to leave?
There was actually 2 incidents that made my family think, okay, it's time to flee. When I was grade 9, that something happened that actually shattered our new normal. In a rare moment of respite from the war, we 3 siblings, me, Sally and Shadi, were sitting outside on our balcony with mom preparing our lunch. We're giggling and joking, like, normal people do. Despite the war, we actually felt in that moment life was okay, good, you feel good here and there. Dad calls us to come to the table, and we went. Then, barely 1 second later, we heard a deafening explosion. We knew straight away it was the missile. We automatically took refuge into the bathroom. We crashed there, trembling, our hearts pounding, fearing for our lives. When the shocking dust cleared, Dad made a shocking discovery. The missile had completely destroyed the balcony. Nothing was left there of where we were sitting, laughing and talking. Only seconds before, nothing but gaping void, actually. All the furniture were raining down amid the dust. The event rocked us to our very core. The memory of how close we came to certain death on that day still haunts and triggers us. But on a lighter note, Mom now said that from then on until we left Syria, she slept every night with one eye open, as if that one open eye could stop an ISIS missile in its track. This balcony incident was followed by another traumatic event. Mm-hmm. The following year, so I was grade 10, that final one day while my mom was teaching at her school, a missile fell short of its intended target, hitting one of the grade 4 classrooms where it exploded. My sister, Sally, was in grade 4 at the time, but in all the panic, noise, smoke and chaos, Mom was uncertain which grade 4 classroom has been hit. Frozen in a terror and shock, she could not bring herself to run towards the place where the missile had exploded, fearing that she might find her daughter's broken and bloodied body. To make matters worse, so many missiles had rained on Damascus that day that the mobile network was jammed, so Mom could not contact me at another school to see whether I was still alive or not. As it turned out, by the grace of God, Sally's classroom was undamaged, and I was okay too. At that stage, ISIS were only 10 minutes drive away from our suburb. I would say it's roughly the distance between Hobart City to Glenorchy, and it was way too close for comfort. And yes, it was the most definitely time to get out of Syria.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a very close and scary call.
Yeah. These 2 incidents just made my family my mom think, okay, it's time to leave.
And so what was the process of leaving? Did you have much time to plan ahead and work out where you were going to go?
So I think after this incident, my family was like, okay, it's time to go. Mm-hmm. And we had a problem what to take with us. So eventually just packed some clothes, our ID cards and other personal papers, our Syrian passport, leaving behind our photos, school certificates, sport trophies, and academic and school sport trophies, I would say, and other irreplaceable treasures. But we knew we could not look back. It was done for us. That's it. But I would still say we were among the lucky ones. At that point, we had a car and schooled into Lebanon legally. Other people were not so fortunate. Soldiers deserting the army, and younger men avoiding conscriptions, or people escaping from suburbs already controlled by ISIS, had to hide and travel on foot under the cover of darkness, alert to every little noise. So for our family, it took us 4 hours to do what used to be a 30-minute to maximum 60-minute trip to Beirut. The roads were jammed with traffic, and at every single checkpoint, the soldiers had to search the entire car, including checking beneath it for possible bomb, and then checks that name against a list of soldiers. To be sure he was not deserting from the army. We were anxious because we knew they often mistook innocent people for ones on their wanted list with the same name. But God was with us, and I think once more that day our luck held.
And do you remember what it was like when you arrived in, was Beirut that you arrived in?
Yeah. We arrived in Beirut, so we were not able to afford to rent a normal house. So lucky for us, my mom's cousin had a house that she was able to rent for us for a cheaper rent. Also, Lebanon was not in a state of war. It was far from welcoming heaven for refugees like us, unfortunately. While the Lebanese people generally tolerated our presence, they did not offer us a very warm welcome because their economy was suffering from the influx of thousands of refugees. The Lebanese government could not give us any financial support, but we were lucky enough, as I say, to have my mom's cousin living in Beirut. So she provided us with a house for a very low and cheap rent, so we did not have to go into any of the refugees camps, and we did not have to register for the United Nations, as we knew we wanted at that point that we want to go to Australia.
So that was your intent rather than just an accident.
Yep, that's my dad's friend in Damascus had already advised us to get to Australia, as it has Australia had a good reputation for welcoming and supporting refugees like us. So that was our intention to go to Australia.
What was the process for trying to get to Australia?
That's a long question. I have a lot to say. So we made a direct application to the Australian Embassy in Beirut. And that was the easy part, I think, filling up the application in English. The hard part was actually not knowing how long the progress would take. And all the while we were using our savings to just survive, we soon discovered that life was much more expensive in Lebanon than what it was in Syria. It was very difficult also to find a job in Lebanon. And those who did find a job were paid a lower wage than Lebanese workers did.
And so were Syrians legally allowed to work in Lebanon, or did they?
We were legally allowed to work. Yep, but again, you would find a job and you will get paid a much lower wage than Lebanese worker. Eventually, after swinging between hope and despair for 9 long months, we got the long-awaited call from the embassy. We had to go for an interview. Each of us was interviewed separately. To check that our stories were the same. It was very stressful. They asked questions like, why are you going to Australia? What are you going to do there? Are you pregnant? Yeah, I know. Okay. My sister, who was 14, and I was 16, and mom had to undergo a pregnancy test. No one explained why. And we did not ask. Honestly, we were just happy to be one step closer to perhaps going to Australia. We were asked whether we had tattoos or had plastic surgeries. I don't know why. We just felt humiliated.
Yes. And did anyone in your family speak English
No,
at the time?
No, none of us did speak English, no, at all.
So that's another difficulty.
Yes, it was definitely another difficulty, especially when we arrived in here. I actually never realised before how much like torture it is to wait for a life-changing news. But luckily for us, we found out only 1 month later. I believe it was a month later. It felt like it was a decade, not like 1 month. To prepare us for our new home, the embassy provided us with a workshop. During that workshop, we were told we were going to Tasmania. Okay. And we were always like, where on earth is that? We never heard of Tasmania before.
And did you get any information about Tasmania at those workshops?
Not really, no. what they did in the workshop is they actually showed us some videos from all the Syrian arriving to Australia.
Okay.
And the videos were really a concern for us. The houses looked really, really old. Now we realize that probably these houses have belonged decades. These Syrian have arrived to Australia decades before, and this house have been belonged to that era. And another thing that we've been told in Australia, in the workshop, is we've been told that Australia would not say hello to us in the streets, like, you know how in the Middle East, yeah, that's what I've been told. And now my mom always saying, and she always tell me how wrong that was every time. Every time someone says hi to her and give her a friendly greeting.
What did you know about Australia before you came? And what did you expect, maybe?
So everybody knew that Australia was hot, and we imagined and we've been told that Tasmania is an island. So we imagined Tasmania was a tropical island. Yeah. We would be greeted by smiling girls, and I thought I would be greeted by smiling girls in a hula skirt who would offer us pineapple and coconut cocktail and place colourful lace around our necks. So imagine our shock when we arrived in Hobart without a warm jacket or warm clothing on a cold rainy day in 2017.
And what time of year was it?
It was in March, yeah.
Okay.
It was in March 2017, but it was raining really badly. But that's all what I thought.
Do you remember what your first feelings or first impressions were when you arrived in Tasmania?
So we've been greeted by our caseworker from the Catholic Care, and she drove us from the back roads from the airport to our temporary accommodation, and we would not be able to see anything but the bush. And we were thinking, where are we going? So we arrived on Friday. She drove us to Centrelink on Monday, and I was like, I would never be able to remember where Centrelink is next week. I'd not be able to remember where the bank is next week. So yeah, it was really hard. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to live here.
And what was it like to go to school here at first?
So I was given the choice either to go to TAFE to learn English, or I can go to school. And I choose to go to school. I choose to go to Guildford Young College, which I'm actually very, very thankful for them, because they provided me with all the support I needed at that point, because I didn't speak any English at all. I remember having a headache when I come back home because people are speaking for the whole, from 8 to 3 in English, and I did not understand a word. I did 3 years in college, so I did grade 11, 12, and they gave me the chance to do grade 13, which was really nice of them. But yeah, going to school in here was not easy, especially the first year. I did not understand a word at all, and it was hard.
And what do you think was the most difficult thing to adapt to in the first few years that you were living here?
I think adapting to the culture in general. I think because all the Syrians that came with us, we arrived as a couple of family. They all moved to the mainland. So I think that was hard to adapt to us being by ourselves. And yeah, Sonia are super friendly, as I said, but we still missed, having this family going to every night where we used to, or that was I think the hardest part to adapt to. I think why we stayed in Tasmania was that we went to good schools, and I think for me personally, I've been told if I would go to the mainland, I would go directly to TAFE, and my goal at that point was to actually go to uni. And I knew it was hard with not speaking English at all, but I knew that probably going to school would give me a bigger chance to go to uni. So that was our first thing, and then we wanted to learn English. We have family that arrived before us to Melbourne or Sydney or the mainland in general, and till now they don't speak in English. And I think that was our main goal. We wanted to adapt to where we are now. We're in Australia, want to learn their culture, want to learn their language, and I can tell you now, I'm 100% sure if I'm in Sydney or Melbourne or any another place in the mainland, I wouldn't be speaking a word of English. They live all together.
You can understand why people want to be together, but at the same time, it makes you're kind of staying in your comfort zone, aren't you?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely was not our comfort zone to stay here. And another thing is, I remember, is arriving to here on Friday. So our caseworker showed us the house where we're staying. She provided us with some food in the fridge already, and she left us for our own devices for the next 2 days. And I think if we were in the mainland, we would have had much more people coming and friends to come and help us, but we were left to it. Luckily, we had a Syrian person that came to visit us and showed us around. But I think if we were in the mainland, we would have been much more confident, because lots of people would have came. And even if I would say the churches, there's lots of Arabic churches in there that would come and greet you on the first day and shows you all around, while in here we didn't have all of that.
But on the other hand, I suppose you've been able to become more independent.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It definitely, Tasmania helped us to be more independent. I had to learn, easy thing, but I had to learn how to use the GPS, the map, to go somewhere. We don't use it in Syria. It's banned.
Okay.
It's banned in Syria.
All right.
It's banned in Syria and Lebanon, so we don't really use it. And I come here and I had to go somewhere. And I was like, okay, I got to use the GPS. And I remember I put it, and I think I walked for 40 minutes. Yes. I've learned how to drive. And I thought in Tasmania was a really important thing to know how to drive. And we all now drive in the family. And yeah, I definitely learned how to be independent. Yeah, I think if I was anywhere else in the mainland, because I can see people and maybe they're better than me, maybe they're more amazing than me, but unfortunately they were not able to do any steps in their life still yet. They still not learned English. I think that's the main thing in Australia, to move on in life and to have a new start and a fresh start, to learn the language. And yeah, they still don't speak any English, unfortunately. Not driving.
Yeah, you can certainly, if you live in Melbourne or Sydney, you can get by without English, but
100%.
It's much harder to get on in your life to be successful, and your options will always be a bit limited.
You'll be restricted to that community, I would say. And I know some people say, it depends on you if you would go there and stay in your community or you go out. But I think when you see the community and everything is there, you find, this is an easy choice. Why would I go to the harder choice?
Yeah.
But when here we have left with only the hard choice. I always wanted to be a teacher. That's something I've done before in Syria. I've worked with children for a long time in Syria since I was really young. And this is something I always wanted.
Okay.
And that was what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I never knew what I want to teach.
Okay.
If I want to say, I was like, how would I want to teach? But in Syria, being a teacher, it's a good job. It's an amazing job. It's not well paid. So whenever I wanted to be a teacher in Syria, I knew that was not the best choice for me. I would not get well-paid salary, and it'll make my life harder, even though if I liked it. But when I came to Australia, I was like, it's my chance to be what I wanted to be. Yeah, I never knew what I wanted to actually teach, but yeah, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher.
And so how did you go about getting into uni and finding out what you wanted to study?
Something I was good at, surprisingly, I never thought I was actually good at, is mathematics. And luckily, mathematics didn't need lots of English. So that's how I started my second year of schooling with Young College. I did pure mathematics units. And these units had really high ATAR as Mathematics 3, Mathematics 4, and General Math 3. So I've done all kind of mathematics to get my ATAR. And I was able to get to uni.
What would you say is maybe the biggest cultural difference between Syria and...
I think the close-knit with the extended families. Mm-hmm. I think the families in general in Syria, we still miss the close-knit, extended family we left behind, and the huge celebrations for birthdays, for first communions, baptisms, engagements and weddings that are typical of life in Syria. I especially feel homesick at Christmas time, for example, when I see photos and video on Facebook of Damascus full decked out in lights and decorations, as only Syrian city could be. It's a big celebration. Christmas and Easter. Life in generally more lively and loud in Syria in the best possible way. Cities are bustling and switched on 24 hours. Life revolves around the family and community. And yes, we miss all of that. but we don't miss the wall. You do miss all of that.
Tell me a bit about Christmas in Damascus and what happens.
So the day before, everyone in Damascus doesn't matter if you're Christian. We are Christian, but it doesn't matter if you're Christian or Muslim. Everyone would go to the hairstylist, get their hair done, get their makeup done. We all buy new clothes the weeks before. So in the morning of the Christmas, we would go to church. We would have a church or two in every suburb. So they would be full of people. So we would go there, have the mass done, and then after the mass, we have the church. I'll say the church groups, and they go every Christmas, and there will be lots of them, be around like 200 in each church group that will play music, and they would walk all around the suburb. And
So like a parade?
yeah, I would say so. Yeah, they would go all around, and you would listen to them playing Christmas music, and
Okay.
yeah, it's beautiful. They will go all around the suburbs. Sometimes their walk will take 2 hours. After that, we will directly go to the grandparents' house, where all the family will be there having lunch. After the lunch, we would be all the family together, but then you will go visit another part of the family. You know, like my cousin is there, like, all right, what are you doing tonight? Oh, we're waiting for you. Okay, at 6 o'clock, we'll be going to the another cousin house, visit them, you know, having Christmas celebration with them, opening Christmas gifts at the grandparents' house. It's a beautiful, beautiful celebration in Syria. Lots of food, lots of love.
And do all the different Christian denominations celebrate together?
Yes, Christmas, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Christmas we do.
Because I know here you have the Orthodox, they have it in January, and Catholics and...
No, in Syria, the Christmas is always the same. Mm-hmm. I think only the Easter that goes into two.
Yep.
So we have the Orthodox Easter and the Catholic Easter. Again, it goes all around Easter. I remember even in the Good Friday, in the evening, where the church group will go out and play the sad music and have the casket, the Jesus casket. They will hold a big casket up. Mm-hmm. And even all the Muslims' shops will close by night when the caskets and the music, the sad music will cross by. Everything will be closed and the lights is off. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, we all celebrate together.
Yeah,
so it was
okay.
beautiful. It was beautiful.
But what would be a typical family event, and how would you sort of celebrate together?
Mother Day. I think Mother Day is one of the... It's in April in Syria, because I think they associated in April because it's the beginning of spring in Syria. So they associate mothers with spring, and we would have the Mother Day at one of my grandparents' house. But again, like if it's my grandmother house that is related to my mom, so my another grandma will also come, so the whole family will be all together. We would have cakes and lots of gifts, and everyone celebrates. Yeah. So that's another big thing. Again, I think we heard a lot of people. We had lots of friends in Melbourne and Sydney saying, "Oh yeah, there's lots of Arabic people. You have all the restaurants, all the lovely food you find." We came to Tasmania and there was none of that. So it was another shock. Yeah. Mm.
No, there's not much. There's not that much in the way of Arabic food here, is there, or Middle Eastern food?
There's no Arabic. There's no actual Arabic or like Syrian or Lebanese supermarket in here at all. Yeah, like I wouldn't find any kind of the cheeses I used to eat anywhere unless I go to Melbourne or Sydney. So yeah, my mom had to learn how to cook all this stuff by herself, making cheese by herself, and making pastries by herself, where we used to just, buy it from the street in the neighborhood, because we had the bread bakery in every street. Now I'm not gonna say suburb, every single street had a bakery and had a supermarket. But yeah, my mom had to learn all of that by herself now. She's nailing it. So that's good. That's good. Yep. She's a really good cooker, so that's good.
Oh, well, I guess that's one of those things that you might not have done if you hadn't come to Tasmania.
No, my mom never thought she would be sitting at home making cheese. No, she never thought of that. And yeah, I think lots of things in Syria we taken for granted, like, the bread we used to have with the cheese and the thyme and on top. And yeah, lots of these little things, like the sweets. Mm-hmm. My mom had to make them here. And she never thought she was going to learn how to make the sweet, because why would you, And everything before the war in Syria was pretty cheap. With your normal salary, you'll be able to afford a very good life. Yeah, I'm buying everything from the street. You never need to actually make it at home.
you've just reminded me of a question I wanted to
Yeah.
ask, and that was about how your parents have adapted, or especially at the beginning. I imagine it was a bit more difficult for them.
It's definitely more difficult. I think you can see it between us. Like, my brother is 8 years younger than me, Shadi, and you can see his English is just perfect. No accent. He's fluent. He's totally fluent. Where you can see my sister, where she's 3 years younger than me. She has still perfect English, but it's maybe a little bit less perfect than Shadi. And then it's me, where my English is okay. And then I think that's made it so hard for my family too, because they're much older than us, to learn the language. My mom definitely found it hard that there is no family around us, no Arabic people around us that she can communicate with as much, and she can go to visit every single day. I think they also really struggled with the job. My dad luckily found a job at a fish and chip shop, but to just cook as a casual. But he used to be HR, and
Yeah.
he was in effect the only the only person in charge in Syria from the company, and he was in fact the CEO for the company. And he just worked as a fish and chip, and he's very grateful, and he's very thankful, and really thankful for God for what we have been given. But it's definitely hard. Yeah, they definitely find it much more harder. My mom still struggled to find a job that she would really enjoy.
Because I guess with her skills as a teacher, English is really important.
Yes,
And
100%.
maybe even a bit higher level than
Yeah.
average.
Oh, 100%, yes. She would not be able to be a teacher again in here, for sure. It's really hard. Unless she decides to go to the mainland and teach in some of the Arabic school, teaching Arabic. But again, I think you need to have that teacher degree to be there. And I think it would be really hard for her to actually go back to uni at this age. Not to say she's old. If she listened to me, she'd be so mad.